And thanks for all joining in for this particular panel. Wendy, what we were expecting is a feedback from you in terms of the gaps that you see during the recruitment, right from the entry level to the different levels, to the mid and to the top leadership within maintenance space. And we'd also want to hear back from you in terms of the gaps you see in their leadership skills when you require them to be able to take up the leadership roles within the organization. And the third bit we would want you to share with us is the constraints that you meet from the regulatory perspective and also the political readiness or how that affects you in terms of recruitment, looking at your requirement and the shortages that you could be having within the industry and in your region. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Maureen. The recruitment space within Kenya specifically, when it comes to maintenance, has quite some good things going for them, and it also, in some instances, has some areas that we could work on as an industry to make sure that we are getting to spaces where talent shortage is not one of our perennial problems. What is currently happening, especially in the Kenyan market, you notice that the labor market currently is very tight, where we have a lot more demand than the supply that we are getting for the labor that is available in the market. And this is not even considering the situations where we are looking for type-specific trainings for the different types of aircrafts that we are having. So you find that there is a huge gap in technical skills that some of these engineers and technicians and other maintenance personnel needs to be having, especially when it comes to the area of avionics. We tend to find that quite a number of people are not very well versed in that area of avionics, especially in the Kenyan market right now. When it comes to certification and licensing, there is quite a number of protocols that help a person to be able to get the certificates and the licenses that they require. But due to some of the regulatory constraints that you have, you find that an individual will take about 4 to 6 years to acquire a license for them to be able to practice in Kenya. So in the sense that they go to school and they are studying, let's say, aeronautical engineering, but for them to get certified and get a license in A&P or get a license in avionics, it can take them about between 4 to 6 years, depending on the type of licensing that you're trying to pursue. Also, when you come into the hands-on experience, especially from a low-cost carrier perspective, where we are using the Q400, you notice that that hands-on experience that we require for the aircraft is not that much within the industry, and it also poses a challenge in terms of skill gap for us. When you look at issues for digital competencies and digital literacy, because of the digitization of very many of the systems that are currently in the market, you notice that the skill to have digitally literate persons within the workspace is becoming a gap that we need to be able to address as industry players and also the people within the space looking for employment. Maureen, if I had you correct in expectations of leadership, there are quite a number of things that we would sit back and hope that in the maintenance section and also just the aviation in general could be given forefront thoughts in terms of development of skill and acquisition of different types of talent. The first thing we need, of course, is the technical expertise. We need to be able to have people that are very technically competent to run the sections that they're running, so that they can be able to get the respect and command authority for the people that they are working with, so that they can also train and disseminate the same knowledge that they have. We also go into issues of understanding fully and complying with regulation becomes very important because this is a leadership role that needs to be able to make sure that the organization remains compliant and also takes leadership in the safety of the organization. When it comes to matters of strategic management and strategic planning, it becomes a huge element in terms of leadership that we need within this sector. We need to be able to sit with, for instance, other collaborating departments and be able to strategically forecast what is needed in terms of labor, in terms of materials, and other costs that can make sure that the reliability of an aircraft and availability of an aircraft remain assured. And this requires for a leader to be able to be very forward thinking, plan very well in terms of both materials and people resources, and also just how they work around the regulations that come with that particular space. I had already touched on issues of innovation and adaptability to technology, because technology has come in and it's really helping us, especially how we are analyzing data and what we are using and how we are learning from this analysis and reports that we are receiving. So it becomes very important for a leader to be very innovative and adaptable to the changing environment, especially in the digital world. Of course, people leadership becomes very important, because when you're not able to lead people in a direction that they feel committed, concerned, and motivated to remain within an organization, it serves a very big disservice to that particular talent and also to the development of the different careers that you have. The other thing that I noticed is quite important for leadership within the maintenance section is crisis management, because most of the time when we get into situations where we are AOG, we cannot find parts, a person that is very steady and works very well in terms of how to manage the crisis and make sure that safety concerns are put into place, operational concerns are not the ones that are coming to override the safety concerns, and that there is a balance that is reached between the two sides to make sure that you remain safe and also work well with the operational requirements. Lastly, I'll talk about issues of sustainability. Sustainability is something that all of us as leaders need to be thinking about. We need to be able to live in an environment and in a society where we are accountable to the people that will come after us, and that we are having responsible practices as we are running businesses in the different aspects that we are leading, including maintenance. If I heard you correctly, Maureen, you also wanted me to talk about some of the regulatory challenges that we are having when it comes to talent. I think for me, the bigger issue is regulators like the civil aviation authorities, and they are having different requirements for different people to practice within the maintenance space. So let's say, for instance, I am an engineer that is certified in AMP in Ethiopia. I would definitely have challenges coming to practice in Kenya, because the process of conversion sometimes takes very long. The other issue that is a bit of a challenge within the regulatory area is the length of time it takes, especially in Kenya, to get somebody certified in one or two of the capabilities that they require to have. Also, in terms of the processes that somebody has to go through to be able to attain the specific knowledge they need in on-job training, so that they can get to be certifying in certain types of the aircraft, becomes very problematic, especially for that individual that does not have an actual active job or work in an active airline where they can get this OJT. I think, Maureen, I have answered most of your questions. If I haven't, you can redirect me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mandy. That was a very good recap on what we wanted to hear from the user of the graduates from the training institution, and also as they move up the ladder within the career. As you clearly have put it, there's a lot of steps that people have to take and which must be looked into. I'm glad that you're bringing in the angle of the regulator and then the organization as well in the leadership skills that we want to see in the people. So it really does require collaborative efforts for us to be able to get what we want to get. I will do ask Nitya, if you'd allow me to call you Nitya, because the name is pretty long, and yeah, so let's get the Indian perspective. And I do also know that you have a lot of experience from different global organizations that you have experienced. So let's hear from you in terms of short term and long term. Wendy has really talked a lot about what we are going through currently, but we would also want to see, just looking at what she has shared with us in terms of what we're experiencing now, what can we do differently, and what have you thought of in terms of addressing these issues, which I'm sure you have faced in the organizations that you have been leading. And it would be very important for us to start focusing on, as we look at what we're doing currently, how do we take the steps to be able to get us to a safer environment? Over to you, Nitya.
Am I heard clearly? Can you hear me? Maureen, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I presume I'm being heard.
Yeah.
All right, good. Firstly, good morning, good evening to everybody of you all. I ask, you can call me Nitya because that's what I'm known in the aviation world. I did hear the professor and Wandera, and this is more or less the most of the airlines in the world are facing this. Yes, I will touch upon different aspects on the short-term issues, how we can resolve the current crisis which the airlines are going through. Basically, the airlines at the moment world over are struggling with the requirement of talent, skills, because post-COVID, I think unexpectedly the demand has gone up, which most of the airlines have been caught off guard. And the major issue at the moment in the short term is how do we manage to get these technicians, the skilled technicians and engineers up and running as soon as possible. I think one of the major challenge which faces everybody, as you all also have mentioned it, is how fast can we get these mechanics and engineers to be hands-on the airplane. Easier said than done. Like you did mention that there are issues with technology. Students who come out of the college, I think there's a big gap there. The aviation schools have not caught up to the technology which the airlines at the moment are requiring, especially when it comes to later generation airplanes like the Airbus 350, 787s. These airplanes really demand a different skill set. And unfortunately, the students who come in from the college, or if they have gone into an airline of a smaller fleet or a fleet which is of the classic generation, they do struggle to come up spin in the airline. And in the airline perspective, it's a cost burden on the airline because what actually happens is when you induct even an experienced mechanic or engineer, or rather engineer more or less is okay because he will be type trained. But when it comes to technicians and mechanics, the issue is the airline, the time between the joining of the mechanic to the time he really gets independently hands-on the airplane is quite significantly large, and the airline then invests a lot of money, both in terms of cost, training, and many other aspects. So this is where the gap which has to be reduced. And the conclusion or my suggestion would be basically is that if you start off in a very short term, I'm sure that we will not be able to get these curriculums introduced in the aviation school as quickly as possible for the current crisis. But I would definitely recommend the technicians and engineers to look at the wider aspect in terms of what the fleet is there, especially when it comes to the modern airplanes, their technology. There are courses available where they can actually undergo both OJT as well as theoretical trainings. They can even if it's possible for the aviation school to quickly adopt a familiarization training, basically on the later generation airplanes, where you really require to be working on a very different level where it comes to software loading, the day-to-day RAM maintenance, the advanced troubleshooting skills which you require on these airplanes. So those are the areas where they really require to cover up. And then once the airline inducts, it's an airline perspective also where they can then tailor cut a little bit of a program for them so that they can quickly be inducted in the airplane. When it comes to long term, I definitely feel that the aviation school and the airlines have to collaborate. Basically, there is a huge gap. I don't think any student who comes out of a aviation college will be able to directly go onto these modern airplanes. It's quite impossible. So there is a large curriculum which is required to change modules, which has to be, decided, and obviously within the regulatory framework. There is a large portion where the airlines can help also, because in the end, if you collaborate right from the beginning, from an airline perspective, it is beneficial to them, where I think both of these have to join hands. One other aspect which you touched upon is the skills. I do notice absolutely the soft skills missing when it comes to mechanics or technicians and engineers. Soft skills are very important apart from the technical skills they have. So basically, like when you look at soft skills, which are communication, team building, leadership qualities, these are one aspect where you really require to take with you to the airline, and this should start right from the aviation school level, where these soft skills also is a part of that training. And obviously they can go into other trainings which are available, where they can learn these leadership qualities, online trainings as well as on-site trainings. Also, what is required to be really considered, which I have noticed, is I do think I'm not being very specific about any area. These aviation schools generally recruit the students based on academic or basically the commercial aspect of it. One large element which I have noticed of lately with the current generation, the new generation which comes up, is the mental challenges which are, the adaptability to this environment. Because I have seen the technology progress over 3.5 decades I've been in the aviation. And it is quite alarming to see that the younger generation or the new generation which is coming in, they struggle quite a bit to adapt to this harsh, I'm not saying harsh, it's a very demanding profession. So I believe right from the time when you induct or when you recruit, when you take these students in, there has to be an aspect of selection where you have to be very clear on what's the roadmap for them. Because the current generation, I feel that when when they come into the aviation world or when they join the airline, even with experience, they suddenly are exposed to this. It's a harsh environment. It's a safety culture which is very strict. Working conditions are quite hard at times, and they tend to, it's what they call it as the instant gratification syndrome just goes off, and then they come into the harsh world, getting into these mental challenges. And it's quite a challenge, because I was really alarmed at many, when I had issues with young people facing these issues. So I think that one aspect also has to be looked upon, is the new generation which is coming on. Unfortunately, today the aviation management is still ruled by the late 50s, 60s, 70 born engineers. And like you rightly mentioned, is many of us in our generation have not really gone through the management skills. We are more on the technical aspects, and the larger strategy is missing a bit, where we really require to look at that aspect, where how do we look at the new generation, what is the technology which we have to provide them. We used to be multitaskers. Probably today that is not the way it is. Their expectations are different. I've seen a guy who joined and says, when I'm going to become the CEO. So so they are quite challenging, and we have to be very communicative about it. And the soft skill in leadership is really, really important. Otherwise, what actually happens is it's a rapidly changing world. Future is going to change, and we have to be very clear, because you look at the technology change when it's coming in. Now, if I give you an example, line maintenance at one time used to be managed by engineers. Today, line maintenance is more or less, because the airplanes have become so smart. They talk, they have maintenance control, which takes over all the information. So today, core line maintenance I'm talking about, is just dispatch of airplane, is just becoming a Cat A licensed aircraft technicians domain. And going in the future, when you have robotics coming in, like drones and the robots which can do the inspection, more or less you will be having line maintenance, which will be only a little bit of a major check, where human interventions would be there. So technology is changing. We have to keep in mind that in the next one decade, you'll have a massive shift into technology. And when it comes to regulation, a large aspect is very challenging. It is, in fact, sometimes frustrating, where there is no standardization between the national or the local NIA when it comes to EASA, FA, and the post students actually go through a repeat cycle of what they did. So they study a certain curriculum on the NIA basis, a syllabus, and then when they have to actually go into the open market, the standardized version of they have to undergo the same modules again to clear EASA, FA, or UKCA. That's where a large need is required, where aviation schools, the airlines, even the regulators, the local regulators, have to sort of standardize the curriculum in such a way that right from the beginning, that there is a level of sort of an alignment, so that the students are not exposed to these sort of repeat things, because it stresses them out, and then it takes them years and years before they come online.
Thank you, Nitya. I think you've given us a very good insight, and just letting us know what it's going to take us to look at the long term. I really do like the idea of the familiarization training in the short term so that we can be able to bring the students up to speed, looking at what their knowledge and skill level is as they enter the industry. And I've also taken some of the suggestions that you're giving us in terms of having to bring in the industry and college to be collaborative on this daunting task. And I know that that is one of the reasons why we decided to have all the stakeholders in this discussion. So I will come over to you, Lynda. You've heard a lot from Wandera and Nitya on what they're going through, what they're experiencing, and I'm sure that you also, from a training perspective, the feedback that you're getting from the industry, there are things that you have done. And clearly, I do expect that you'll be looking at how do you change the training trends so that you can be able to meet some of the challenges that the industry is going through. So I will let you give us your insights in terms of what you're looking at from a safe perspective. So I'll ask you in terms of what you have put in place, or how do you expect to look at the training component or the curriculum that you're giving to give us the numbers or to churn out the numbers that we would require in terms of the demand that we're seeing with the technicians that will be required, and especially now that aviation is waking up and we are seeing a large number of organizations or operators, requesting for big numbers of aircrafts to be produced. To us, when we're sitting from our perspective as people who are going to operate these aircrafts, it means that we need the numbers to be able to maintain them, to give us the quality maintenance that we need to keep the safety going and the industry growth as well to be sustained. So I will look at what you're going to do in terms of helping us to reduce the global shortage of the technicians, how you have evolved your training, and above all, what and how, what fundamentals are you looking at as important as we navigate this space? Over to you, Lynda. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. And thanks for having me today, by the way. This has been very interesting and some great comments from my colleagues on the panel this afternoon. It's this morning for me. I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So I'm the Dean of a School of Transportation. Within that school, we have an aviation program. We have 3 programs. Each program aligns with the Transport Canada license. We're hearing this across the world. CAE did a talent forecast in 2023. They're predicting about roughly 400,000 technicians needed by 2030. So that's not very long from now. It's, less than, just over 10 years, I think, is what they had predicted within 10 years. So that's just 2033, I guess, or 2034. So this isn't going to get solved tomorrow, the talent shortage. And I think from where I'm sitting, the biggest barrier for us to provide more trained workforce for our airlines and our business aviation folks is so most governments manage the curriculum in terms of the governing bodies. So EASA has a curriculum for the B1, B2. Transport Canada has the curriculum for the licensing, FAA, CAA. So everyone has kind of like their own curriculum that they want the schools to provide. This is a problem because we all know governments, bureaucrats don't work fast enough. So updating the curriculum is a challenge. And so the curriculum we are working on, for example, at Transport Canada, the last time the curriculum was updated was in the late 1990s. So think of the advancements in the aircraft that have happened since then, yet the curriculum is not keeping up. So schools are having to teach a certain curriculum that's been defined by the governments that hasn't been updated in quite some time, which is interesting because we're all ICAO nations, and ICAO has come up with some competency framework, which doesn't seem to have kind of picked up any momentum, unfortunately. But I think that's, You know, if we want to start providing maybe like a higher skill set for, you know, entry-level workers, we need to start looking at this competency-based model, because some students will take longer, some students don't need the entire time. And, you know, we're all about hours. I think somebody talked about, you know, I think it was maybe Dr. McAndrew who talked about we have this idea that students need to be sitting 8 hours in a classroom to learn. Some folks learn in 4 hours, some folks learn in 12 hours, right? So let's adapt the training so they can, so if we can get somebody through faster, then that's great, right? But then we can take the time with those that need more time. What we're also seeing is the level of student that's coming into the post-secondary system. So when they come out of a high school, you know, and I give this kind of illustration to industry is we take them from here, we get them here, and then industry takes them from here and gets them here, right? But what we're seeing now is we're getting students that are a bit lower level than what they were maybe 10 years ago. So even in the high schools, we're seeing kind of a lower skill set, a lower knowledge base when they come to us. So we're having to try and get them to a higher level within the same time frame. So this is, you know, it's quite the challenge, actually. And I think you had mentioned mental health issues. So we're definitely seeing an increase in mental health issues in young folks, which is really unfortunate. So sometimes it can be a higher stress type of work environment, right? Because you have AOGs, you have deadlines, the aircraft has a departure time of 7, and you're trying to get it repaired by, you know, the departure time. So there is, you know, there can be instances where there's higher levels of anxiety, higher levels of stress. And so to be able to manage that appropriately is becoming more of a challenge, because we're seeing more mental health challenge in our youth, or in our young folks. I just want to make sure I'm covering all my notes here. What we're seeing, obviously, a lot more automation in terms of, I think also somebody talked about avionics, how that seems to be more of knowledge gap around avionics. In Canada, we have a license just for avionics. So we have a program that's avionics focused. So we may not see that as much. I know the FAA doesn't have an avionics focus. I believe the B2 for EASA is more avionics. So it depends, again, what country, what governing body, what government curriculum you're working with. But we are seeing that even in the curriculum that we have that we need to work with, it is not updated to the extent it needs to be. Just think about the entertainment systems that are in aircraft now. Like, they're very advanced, right? And so, and yet we're training folks to the level of, you know, like basic radar, and we're talking about, you know, incandescent lighting still. So, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the curriculum. So I think that's foundationally that needs to be fixed. And then somebody also mentioned about the mobility of technicians. So it's unfortunate that a technician from Canada who's certified to maintain a 737 in Canada hasn't, you know, can't easily go to Europe or to Africa and work at an airline there on the same type of aircraft, right? We've made it very difficult for technicians to move around the world, even though it's the same type of aircraft. So why is that? You know, so there's some fundamental flaws in the system that I think if we start addressing, that we will help promote, again, mobility worldwide, updated curriculum. So there's some like foundational things here that we really need to look at. And again, we're all ICAO nations, or most of us are. So why isn't it easy? You know, it's intriguing to say the least. And then there's the high cost of training. This is a high skill set industry. So we can't have folks coming off the street, so to speak, start working on aircraft tomorrow morning. it becomes obviously it's a safety intensive industry, so we need to make sure that folks keep themselves safe, especially now, like the 787. There's some high voltages there, right? You need to know what you're doing. If you put hydraulics on, you need to make sure you're clear of flight controls, those types of things. So we need to make sure that workers are safe, general public is safe, the flying public is safe. So a safety conscious industry like this requires a higher skill set of training. And so, which makes it a little bit more of, I don't want to call it a problem, because safety should never be a problem. It's more of a process, I guess, to get people to the point where they are safe to work on aircraft. We are looking at doing more of an apprenticeship model. So I'll call it apprenticeship style training. So this is one of the things that we're looking at. And what we want to do is we will start with some foundational learning for folks. Then they will go and do an internship with a company. Then they would come back to us for some further training. And then they would repeat that cycle 4 times. So, and I think it's just to create another pathway into industry, right? Because not everyone can take, especially if you're an older person and maybe this is a second career choice for you, you can't just give up what you're doing, go to school for 2 years to change industry. So what we're trying to do is incorporate more of an apprenticeship style. So they have that, you do some foundational knowledge, you go and work in industry, and then you go back and forth. So until you're done your 4 years, so you can apply for your license and complete your exams. So again, just looking at the different pathways that we can offer folks to, enter the industry, and yet still make them, give them a basic competency and make them safe. I'm just looking, there's some great comments here, and I just want, I talked about mobility, the cost burden of training, and even the cost burden of companies, airlines, business, airline industry. There's a high cost to training, right? Because if you're doing your own training, that means you're taking resources typically off the floor to train your new employees, right? So now those folks aren't working on aircraft anymore. They're being used to train. And if you're already short on the hangar floor of, competent technicians, that becomes a problem because now they're even shorter, right? So partnering with post-secondary education system, that's, I think, a key to success there in terms of getting folks trained up to the level that you need them to be working on your type of aircraft. And so there's different models out there, but yes, sorry.
Thank you so much, Lynda. I can see you have a lot of information that you'd want to share with us. I'm just hoping that you will be able to give us some of those points so that we can be able to have a look at it, and then the different panelists and also the target group out here who will benefit from the information that you have shared. I really, really like, while I'm doing the wrap up, I see that it is really, really important for us to be able to work as stakeholders, because right from the equipment manufacturer, because they also need to see that the equipment that they're sending out can be able to be maintained. So it is not really just with the operator, but we need to make sure that right from the time that we are actually on the production line, what are we doing as we are coming up with the new technology and as we are developing it during research and development of these improvements, then we need to know that we need to be working with the industry to meet what the aircraft is going to be rolling out with. So good insights, and I really, really thank you all for the effort and the detail that you have taken to be able to come and give us a presentation and share with us. And I hope that everybody else in here can understand the challenge that we're having and the need for us to cooperate, come into partnership, collaborate, because this is not going to be a short term, as we have said, and it needs all of us hands on board for us to be able to get this space and this industry where we want to see it. Technology is good, it's helping us. We are enjoying the good equipment that we have now, comparatively to where we started with the 707s and all. So it only means that we need to be able to work together as well the same amount of energy. Right from the time when we are researching and developing it, I think we need to be sharing this information with the industry, all the way from the training institutions to the people who are going to operate the aircrafts. So thank you. And I really appreciate all. Please share the detail, share the information you have. Let's share it all with the people who have attended today. And I'm hoping that we will be able to give our contacts and where people want to dig further and ask a few more questions, that they will be able to reach you. Thank you. Over to you, Jared, for the next panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Maureen, thank you so much. Thank you. I just want to mention to our panelists, there's a question button right at the lower end of your screen, and we'll be checking in it. I'm checking just see what is coming up. I've seen questions that come up so far from Collins, Austin, and other people are still sending them in. We will be able to respond some of them as we proceed. And so thank you, Maureen. We will go next, and at this point, we will go Alex from KCA. KCA are our host authority. Alex, please, you may come in and give us the KCA's perspective of on what you are discussing. I don't know whether my mic is, just a second.